Okay, does everyone see the full screen now?
Yeah, it's all
Okay,
there. It's all there, Ed. Yes, it's fine.
okay. Well, today I'm going to give you a talk on Professor Segno and his success in the European African colonies. And I'd like to start off with some thanks to some of my co-conspirators in this endeavor. Philippe Desleep, who's a specialist in American religions circa 1900, Larry Harnish, who's a features writer for the Los Angeles Times, and the members of the IAPSOP, which is the International Association for the Preservation of Spiritualist and Occult Periodicals. These three fellows, John Boucher, Mark Demarest, and John Patrick Devaney, maintain a fantastic fraud website, mostly for the United States from 1850 to 1950. And it's been my pleasure to make some contributions to this website through my fraud studies. Unfortunately, I have to start out with a warning to everyone. This lecture may be dangerous to your health. The transmission of residual Segno success waves via Zoom has not been studied to date, and I recommend the use of protective equipment. And in that view, I would just like to show you the talk I gave at the Akron Collectors Club a few years back, and you can see every member came with protective equipment in case there was some residual success waves running about in Ohio at the time. So how does something like this start? And of course, with me, it all has to start with the French colonial group type. I collected group type postal history from 1976 until 2019, when I sold the collection via Spink. And back in 1988, I was at the American Baltimore National Show at the booth of Guy Dillaway, and I bought these two Saint-Pierre and Miquelon covers. Both are at the 50 centime registered rate with combinations of group type stamps, and they fit very, very nicely into my collection. The price was right. But I couldn't help noticing that they were addressed to one Professor A. Victor Segno. And who was Professor Segno, and why did he warrant covers from the tiny French colony of Saint-Pierre and Miquelon? Well, to make a long story short, Professor Segno was a self-proclaimed mentalist who, for the sum of $1 per month or $10 per year, would send his good vibrations, so-called success waves, in your direction twice a day, and your life would improve in numerous areas, including health, wealth, love, success, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He operated out of Los Angeles from about 1900. To unite his subscribers, he formed the Segno Success Club, membership in which was part of his subscription fee. And he claimed to be the creator of the new science of mentalism and formed the related organization, the American Institute of Mentalism. And here's Professor Segno at the top, sending one of his success waves, and you can see all the areas in which one's life would improve, shown at the left. Then we have a picture of him circa 1905. You'll notice his prominent head of hair. And then later on, when he was about 50 years old, another picture showing the mature Professor Segno. How successful was he in this endeavor? Well, around 1903, the Success Club had 12,000 members, each paying, that's international members, each paying monthly or yearly membership fees. That's about $120,000 a year, or the equivalent of $2.4 million in today's purchasing power. The postmaster of LA, in response to complaints about Segno's activities by the Bishop of LA, the bishop was concerned that Segno was absorbing monies that properly belonged to the Catholic Church. The postmaster noted that Segno was doing nothing unusual relative to the activities of many others at the time. Segno was actually investigated by the post office in 1903, and no charges were filed. And the problem was, of course, you could not trap a success wave, put it in a bottle, and scientifically show it was nonsense. Interestingly, the postmaster also noted that Segno was the largest private mailer in LA, sending as many as 6,000 to 7,000 letters per day and receiving thousands of letters back in return. With the proceeds from his activity, Segno built a mansion and a publishing office in 1905 in the Echo Park section of LA, from which he conducted his business activities. And I've noted a 1911 report that indicates that Segno had about 70,000 clients, but this number has not yet been confirmed. From the IAPSOP group, they sent a member to Washington to go through the post office histories, and they found the fraud case for Professor Segno in 1903. You notice it says Segno Success Club, A. Victor Segno, president. And if you go down to the blue arrow, it simply says evidence insufficient for fraud order. So Professor Segno squeaked by the post office's investigation. How successful was he? Well, in 1905, he began building his complex in the Echo Park section of LA. And at the left, we see the main building, which is the American Institute of Mentalism, home of the Segno Success Club. And then the building, the smaller building in back, that's actually the Segnogram Publishing Company that handled all of his publishing, all of his printing, and I should note in all of the major European languages. If you went through the main entrance, the entrance hall, and out back, you came to the court and gardens, which he called Inspiration Point, and the lake just beyond is Echo Lake, which today is the home of Echo Lake Park, a famous park in Los Angeles. If you turn the duplex postcard over, you can see it's from Inspiration Point, Echo Park, Los Angeles, California. It's posted at the 1 cent rate. This is a third-class printed matter rate. You notice no date in the date stamp, no month, no day. That's typical for printed matter. And then at the left, a very simple advertisement. If you seek success, write to the Segno Success Club. And very nicely, a Syracuse arrival on this card to show that it properly went through the mails. Segno advertised internationally for his Success Club and his Success Waves, and these went out in information packets that responded to his advertising. This again was the 1 cent per 2-ounce printed matter rate. This example is franked by a very nice Pan-Pacific 1 cent stamp, canceled by the Los Angeles Station E, cancel Station E being his Segno's local post office. And these typically contained a letter of introduction, introductory information, an order form, and a self-addressed returned envelope. And nicely, this example was sent to New South Wales, Australia, all that for one centime. Again, I should note all of this was conducted in all of the major European languages. How large were his operations in Echo Park? Well, photos show a staff of 12 people working in the mailroom, and you'll notice here there are actually 3 mail sacks ready to go out, and they're preparing 3 more that day. And if you looked in his secretarial area, you saw at least 12 people working in the secretarial office. The LA postmaster claimed in his would be fine.
No, I
Okay,
need the
Lloyd?
host to give me permission. So since the host is gone.
Okay, well, we'll just continue on. He wrote a book, The Secret of Memory, How to Possess a Perfect Head of Hair, of course. His last book is Into This World. Hi. Okay, we started again. Hi, Chris, you're back. And his last booklet that I'll note is How to Be Happy Though Married. Professor Segno divorced his first wife in 1903, married an employee named Annie Del Dinsmore, who came to take on a prominent place in the American Institute of Mentalism. And then he ran off to Germany in 1911-12 with one of his secretaries. So his history in marriage is not so great. As I said, the language was not a problem. He published in all the major European languages. And from my ephemera collection, you see the Law of Mentalism in English, German, and Spanish here. There was a private copy in 1930 printed in Romanian. And 10 years after his death, there was a new edition of the French version of the Law of Mentalism by one Paul Clément Jagot that I happened to get a copy of. So his book on mentalism was quite popular. Here's my copy of How to Be Happy Though Married. You can see at the bottom of the right side, it was published in 1901 by the Segno Publishing Company. Larry Harnish has a little The Mystic Road to Success. It's about that's a 12-page booklet. Loic, do you want to have a try at recording also? I think Chris is back.
No, I think Chris is back, so I'm not sure we can have two recording at the same time, but that's
okay. All right. I'll just continue on. Also attached here, you see the little vignette at the lower left. That's the Success Club ad you saw in the postcard, only now in a French version. These were issued as almost small stamps. I've never seen one on a cover, but I certainly would like to find one that way. Here's an ad from a German magazine. This is actually part of the back cover of a German magazine. And it reads in German, "Hidden secrets of the power of the soul will be revealed to the world." And of course, you see the big key with Erfolg written in the key. And Erfolg, of course, is the German word for success. The implication being Segno's scam is in fact the key to success. Around 1900, the collecting of silver spoons was fashionable in the United States, and Segno could not resist an opportunity to make a little more money, so he issued a silver spoon highlighting the Segnogram Publishing House, which you can see in the bowl, and if you go up the handle of the spoon, at the top you see the key and you see success. Again, the key to success. So at this point, you're probably wondering, did the good vibrations work? Well, he had numerous testimonials. You'll no doubt be glad to learn that since joining your club, I have improved my health, supported myself and little baby girl, and made over $1,000 and risen from a servant to be a proprietor. I consider your success club to be the greatest discovery ever made by man. Pretty good testimonials. I personally estimate that membership in the Success Club appeared to be successful for about half of the members, okay? There was a high probability that something good would happen in their lives relating to those 9 categories that I showed you before. These could be an investment success, the birth of a healthy child, a new job, maybe a cure of what the club member thought was a significant health issue, which it may not have been, or it was something relatively minor, or they did experience a cure. Similar success was experienced with homeopathic medicine at the time. And I should note, as a species, I think we're easily fooled. And as an example of that, I offer the furor that hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin caused in our current pandemic, when in fact that neither drug has shown any efficacy in double-blind placebo-controlled studies. Yet hydroxychloroquine was recommended by the United States president at the time. And of course, there's the whole thing of homeopathic medicine, which still exists today, yet there's no medicine in homeopathic medicine. So with that introduction, we're going to go to West Africa and take a look at the success of Segno's success waves. And just to show you his linguistic capability, there's the success wave being sent out in Spanish at the top. And it's important to note that many of the covers are from small, remote villages and not just the colonial capitals and large commercial centers. So starting in West Africa, because it's so rich in European colonies, these are the colonies that I actually have Segno material from, which in itself is quite remarkable. He was able to reach all of these colonies with his advertising. Here's an example from Bathurst, Gambia, from 1915. Registered rate, anything registered contains some monetary vehicle for the purchase of Segno wares, be they success waves or books. This one is Annie del Segno, who is actually in charge of the American Institute of Mentalism in 1915, as Segno was off trying to organize the German branch of the club in Berlin. Of course, World War II put an end to that, and he came back a total failure. Personally, I've always wondered about the colony of Gambia. Why did the French permit this intrusion, this river valley colony, into the heart of its colony of Senegal? And Gary Lowe, who's a specialist in the US in Gambia, pointed out that the French and the British were arranging a transfer of Gambia to the French in 1870, but that was interrupted by the French failure in the Franco-Prussian War, and things seem to have ceased after that, so Gambia remained in British hands. Here are a couple of examples from Freetown, Sierra Leone. This to the Segnogram Publishing Company directly. That's quite unusual. This is the standard 2.5 penny rate. And another example based on a 1 penny envelope raised to the 2.5 penny rate. And let's just take a little stop at the Segnogram Publishing Company. Here's a photo of it up close so you can see what it looks like. You can see the name on the marquee above the entranceway, the Segnogram Publishing House. And here are two of the books that he published: Into This World and Why, his last publication, and The Secret of Memory, a 1906 version. And in the Into This World and Why, of course, he's always offering more things to be sold. And at the right, he's offering bound leather copies of Into This World and Why that can be bought and in bulk and distributed to your friends as gifts, and of course, promulgating knowledge about the Segno success system. He also did contract publishing, and here's an example of a book on raising chickens in California by one Mrs. A. Basley. And if you look at the bottom right, it was published by the Segnogram Press. And just added in the last 2 weeks is this booklet, The Goblin's Christmas. And you can see it was printed in LA by the Segnogram Publishing House in 1908. And this is actually a children's storybook about how the goblins are going to capture Santa Claus and prevent Christmas, done in poetry. It's actually quite an amazing book and very nicely illustrated. So continuing on in West Africa, here we have from Grand Bassam, Ivory Coast in 1923, a 50-centime rate cover showing the pirogue issue of the Ivory Coast on a pre-printed envelope from the American Institute of Mentalism. And from the same year, the same issue, a 1 franc registered cover to the American Institute of Mentalism. And I should note, Segno accepted all monetary vehicles, all currencies, money orders, express orders, stamps. That was all valid currency for Segno's wares. Seeing the pirogues just reminded me the pirogues were actually one of the main vehicles of transportation in West Africa for the native population. And here's a nice group type postcard from Gabon, Cap Lopez, showing the pirogues. And you can see at the left, they even had a small pirogue for children to practice on. And I should note, and this will figure in a bit in the talk, that the pirogues were used to carry the mails amongst the small villages in West Africa as the major means of transportation. Onto the Gold Coast, we have here two letters from Kumasi and Dodowa, 1915, 1913, and they were both posted at a printed matter rate of a halfpenny, the first in 1915 and at the right, and that arrived without issue. But the second at the lower left was also posted at the halfpenny rate. No problem was noted at the Office of Origin, but in the US, they picked up it violated printed matter regulations, so it was considered as due. It was short 2 pence, which is equivalent to 4 pence due, which is equivalent to 8 cents United States. And you see the duplex cancel from the Hudson Terminal office and the nice use of American postage due stamps. Question is, why was the halfpenny one being sent to Professor Segno? And I thought about that for a while and came up with some explanations. But I think the most obvious is correct. Look at the date. It's January 12th, 1915. Based on the date and rate, somebody was sending holiday greetings to the professor. They were delighted with the success of his success waves, I'm certain. Here's one from the village of Kita, posted at a 1 penny rate. Small village posting at a 1 penny rate. The problem was there was no 1 penny rate from the British colonies to the US. Colonialists often assumed there was and franked accordingly. However, there were 1 penny rates from the British colonies to Great Britain or the British colonies, and a 1 penny rate from Great Britain to the United States. There are loads of colonial letters from this period franked at 1p to the United States, which allows for studies on how underfranked mail was handled. In the case of the Kita post office, they did not note the underfranking. It's short a penny and a half. And it's been my general observation when the sending post office fails to recognize an underfranking, the letters generally proceed to the final destination without postage due. This one is addressed to the Life Culture Society, which is actually the entity that officially printed the book Into This World and Why. It's the only recorded letter I have to them, and you can see it made it to the United States at the 1 penny rate. Here's another attempt at a halfpenny rate sent from Cape Coast in the Gold Coast. This one was properly treated at Cape Coast. It was hit with a T for postage due. When it arrived in the United States at the Penn terminal, it got the binocular and proper 8 cents postage due, which was collected. So it has the T in triangle. It's all properly handled. And when you turn it over, it very nicely has the Gold Coast censored hand stamp applied in Accra, 1916, with the initials ER, which is probably the employee who handled the censorship of this particular piece. So overall, that's a quite unusual piece of postal history. Here's one that was sent from Mango Ace at the 2p rate. Again, a halfpenny short, but it wasn't caught, so it went through, and we simply end up with a nice censored letter to the American Institute of Mentalism. Here's one at the double weight registered, again from the village of Dodowa, with the war tax stamp and also a passed by censor Accra hand stamp. So you can begin to collect a little bit of the Gold Coast's interesting postal history at this period in these Segno letters. And here's a proper 2.5 penny letter to the Segnogram Publishing House with the censored mark. German Togo also provided a tiny bit of mail, and here's a letter from Atakpame, Togo, franked at the proper 20 pfennig international rate to Professor Segno with one of those pre-addressed envelopes that was sent to a client in German Togo. I'm aware of only 2 Segno letters from Togo. I'm sure you're all aware of the British-French occupancy of Togoland beginning in 1914, where forces from the British and French Gold Coast and Dahomey defeated the Germans in Togoland in a short campaign and occupied the area under French and British control. Here's an example from the Anglo-French occupation at the 4.5 penny rate, registered to the American Institute of Mentalism, again with a nice censor tape. The name of Hollingsworth is crossed out. He's a later addition to one of the key members of the American Institute of Mentalism. We don't really know much about him. He didn't stay long, and his name was simply obliterated from the existing pre-typed letters with the American Institute of Mentalism put back. Here's an unusual one from Tsiui, Togo, again, British-French occupation. It's only a 2 penny stamp, so it's a halfpenny short. The interesting thing is the cancellation. It looks like the cancellation is falling apart, and the Gold Coast, it was an old Gold Coast circular date stamp that was actually modified, poorly modified for use from the Anglo-French occupation. And the way they attempted to obliterate Gold Coast didn't quite work as it started coming back as the obliteration media failed in its job. Here's one from an Echo Togo from the French-British occupation, again showing the overprints on the native climber issue of the French colonies in West Africa, with some additional members, newer members of the American Institute of Mentalism, and a nice British censorship as the letter went through Accra. Here's one from Porto Novo, Dahomey, showing group type stamps, which I was very, very pleased to add to the collection, and have something to say about it a little later on. You can see this went through the British hands in Lagos, Nigeria. There's another one from Ouida, Dahomey, with the native climber issue at the proper 50 centime rate. Actually a quite spectacular cover with a nice combination, nice strikes of everything concerned, and it did come through the Paris registry office en route to New York and eventually Los Angeles. Nigeria presents all sorts of interesting aspects. Here's one from Lagos, southern Nigeria, at the 2.5p rate, addressed in Spanish to Professor Segno. Here's one from a small village with a proper 2.5p stamp, Barutu, southern Nigeria. Registered one from Kano, northern Nigeria, in 1913. And as I mentioned, anything registered had a monetary vehicle in it. And finally, a very, very late Segno cover from 1936. 1937 is the year of the last Segno covers. This is at a 6p registered rate, And the interesting, nice piece of Nigerian postal history. And the interesting thing about it is it's to the numerology department. So by 1936, probably things were in bad shape and they were trying everything they could think of including numerology to keep the scam going. From Cameroon, we have the French occupation, and here's nice use of the Middle Congo, the French Congo stamp, Native Woman stamp, overprinted. This is 5 cents, 5 centimes overpaid. The rate was 25. I think somebody just had a 30 available. There, I've not seen any examples of philatelic covers to Professor Segno. And here's one from Eboloa, Cameroon, in 1917, registered one of the Hollingsworth letters. And there are all sorts of interesting aspects to this cover. The first thing is the French date stamp does not say Eboloa, it says Ebolona. It ends in N-A. And for a period of, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, they used this incorrect circular date stamp, and it wasn't corrected until the 1920s. They also used from this office the German registry labels, as you can see there. Until they ran out, they didn't just replace them immediately. And under the registry label, you can see it says registered at the left, register at the left, and then AR. So this is actually a cover for which a return receipt was requested, and one of the few AR covers I have in the collection. And then you can see the proper 50 centime registered rate, and the cover is a mess. Okay, why am I showing you this horrible cover? Well, it probably traveled on one of the pirogues, and probably the case which carried it fell into the river somehow. And it got all wet, but the letter was recovered, dried, and forwarded through the mails. Unfortunately, they did not create a damaged hand stamp for this particular incident. So we have to guess at these things. You can also see outlines of the contents of inside this letter that the wetting of it caused. Finally, the last cover from West Africa. This is Santa Isabel, Fernando Po. It's probably the rarest. It's at a double weight registered rate to Professor Segno. And you can see, the Fernando Po date stamp from June 14th, and it traveled via the Spanish service and Madrid en route to New York. It's a very nice cover, independent of the Segno Association. The Segno Association just makes it even more interesting. And if you can't remember where Fernando Po is, there it is, a little island off of the West African coast that was under Spanish control. So how did Segno do it? Well, the first thing was good advertising at the local level. He had agents all over the world putting ads in newspapers, important local journals. And as this slide shows, he had support at the local level. What we have at the right is a quote from the Gold Coast leader at Cape Coast from 1904 by the editor, one John D. Oto. Philip Desleep found this on the web. And basically, it's a copy from the Segnogram magazine of 1904 on convictions and sticking to them. So Segno had support at the local level from some of the local publishers. And the most interesting thing about all of this, there are more Segno covers from the Gold Coast than every other entity. Okay, I've counted over 35 so far. I have about 17. The only country that comes closest to that is Chile, or Chile. And the reason for that is there was a client in the town of Molina who over a 4-year period sent more than 15 covers, registered covers, to Segno. And so we have a high level of covers from Chile, and one client who was spending a fortune on Professor Segno's wares. Very, very unusual. So what about the rest of Africa and related areas? I'm going to expand the definition of a colony a little bit. Here's one from Cairo, Egypt, which certainly had a lot of strong British and French influence in its history. And it's a 2 million postal stationery envelope to Professor Segno. That's the printed matter rate. Again, why was printed matter going to Professor Segno? Again, this is from December of 1912. So I'm quite certain it was holiday greetings and reflecting happiness with the Success Club. Here's a more typical letter from Alexandria. It's actually got a commercial return address. The fellow True was probably a member of the Success Club, or he was becoming a member. And this is addressed to Annie Del Dinsmore, Segno's wife at the time, who was acting as treasurer and oversecretary of the organization. Unfortunately, I don't have a good cover from Algeria. I have two, and they're a bit ratty like this, but this does show nice use of the 50 centime Merson issue at a proper rate. Better, I have a very, very fine cover from Safi, Spanish Morocco, the Spanish office in Morocco at the time, addressed to the Segno Success Club. And you can see, again, this went through the Spanish service en route to New York and then LA. Really nice piece of Spanish postal history. And again, expanding the definition of Africa ever so slightly, here's one from Madeira at the proper 100 rice registered rate to Professor Segno. Quite unusual that he even had clients in places like Madeira. Now swinging over from West Africa to East Africa, let's go to Mozambique and Zambezia. Here's a registered letter from Teta, which is a mining colony, was a mining colony in the Mozambique area. This is interestingly franked with 250 rice Zambezian stamps, 1 2.5 centavos Lorenzo Marx stamp for a 12.5 centavos rate. You see the registry label, and you also see South African censorship. And if that's not enough, you turn it over, and we have the 1 centavo Mozambique war tax stamp on the back and the rest of the censored label. So it's just loaded with wonderful philatelic elements. Again, it's one of the rarest covers in the collection. From that to simplicity itself, from Penhalonga, Southern Rhodesia in March 1905, we have the earliest recorded Segno cover. In fact, in 1905, Segno started selling his foreign correspondence to the philatelic trade, and that's why we have these covers, okay? And this is the earliest one from Penhalonga, and I maintain that Penhalonga, again, was a mining community, and it was relatively small. And according to this postcard, here was a place in the Penhalonga area where you could rent space for an overnight stay, and I think that nicely reflects its status as a very small area. From the South African complex, I have a few covers. This is from Natal, Port Shepstone. We'll just go through these quickly. A wonderful one from Premier Mine, Transvaal. Again, the registered rate, money for some Segno product, 2 different censor hand stamps, and the African censorship. So overall, a very, very desirable cover with lots of philatelic elements. From the Orange River Colony, Krugersdorp, registered. And finally, to show, yes, indeed, I do collect covers from large cities. Here's one from Pretoria with the Orange River Colony stamps to Professor Segno. So where do we finish this? Okay, how am I doing on time? Pretty good. Well, let's go to Madagascar, okay? Madagascar wasn't officially part of Africa, but it certainly had a lot of African population that immigrated over there from Africa. Certainly there was a lot of commerce and shipping between Madagascar and Africa. So I've included this as the finish. And what we have here is a most basic group type letter from Tananarive, the capital of Madagascar, but it's got a Grand Comoro stamp, group type stamp on it. And why is this? Well, in 1911, the Comoro Islands became an official part of Madagascar and colonies, and the group type stamps were used interchangeably among all the entities in Madagascar and dependencies. So we have Grand Comoro used from Tananarive, and this all began in 1911. Here's another one from Tananarive that shows a nice combination of low-value group types and the 1 centime postman issue where the natives are bearing the postman on his rounds in Madagascar. There's another 1 penny stamp, 1 centime stamp on the reverse that properly completes the 25 centime rate. And you note the cancellation is Tananarive 2. That's a secondary office in Tananarive. Here's one from Fenerive, Madagascar, a smaller village, franked with 5 Mayotte 1912 overprints, which is nice. And it's to the Chirological College of California. And I haven't mentioned that up until this point, but you notice the address is Inspiration Point, Echo Park. So it's definitely a Segno item. And what the Chirological College was, it was the first fraud entity created by Segno in 1900. It was an entity for palm reading and fortune telling and the teaching of such, not only the practice, but the teaching of such. It never amounted to much, yet it was never closed. So covers occasionally appear. And I say I have 9 covers. It's actually 10, well, sort of 10 right now. I just bought one from Ecuador on eBay addressed to the Chirological College. So that's a nice combination of a small village and the Little Scene addressee. Here's one from another small village at the 25 centime rate to Professor Segno with group type and the native bearer type. And finally, from Madagascar, 84 numeral cancel. And I don't know if you know about these or not, but in 1899, the French realized they were expanding in Madagascar faster than they can keep track of things. They couldn't provide date stamps for all the newly opening post offices. So they created a series of numeral cancels, 2 styles. One, the numbers were from 1 to 99, and one style, it was the number at the top, Madagascar on the bottom, as is here, and the other style was Madagascar at the top and the number at the bottom. And the aim of we collectors of this stuff is to try and associate a number with its period of use and establish from where it was used, if possible. And for years, we would send this data to Dr. Jacques Desneaux of Colfra, and he was the keeper of all the data and would occasionally publish articles and tables about when the numbered cancellations were used and from where. I should note they were used from 1899 to 1939, okay, 40 years. So it's quite a period in Madagascar postal history. This one is nice in that first off, it's got the Mohili and Anjouan stamps. It shows the use of the number 84 from November 1913. And then we have a very, very nice return address at the top, so we know from where it was used. and it was used from a newly opened sub-office, again in Tananarive, okay, Faravo Rohitra in Madagascar. So that's the postal history. And I've just told you a little bit about the history of the Segno organization as I encountered it. I didn't try and give you a total history, but I thought this graph gives me an opportunity to give a summary of the total history. And this is a plot of Segno covers by the year. My collection was, when I did this, 275 covers strong. And as I said, incoming mail was sold to the philatelic trade starting in 1905. And here are the comments, good and bad. 1905, Segno builds his Echo Park complex, and you could see the fortunes of the American Institute of Mentalism are rising. 1906 to 8, the success of the Success Club. 1909 and 10, something drastic happens. And of course, that's where the Segno marriage to Annie del Segno begins to fail. They were divorced in 11, and she took over as Segno went to Berlin. In 1912, he married a new secretary and opened the branch of the Segno Success Club. So starting in 1911-12, Annie del Segno was running the American Institute of Mentalism, and you could see things come back to very, very strong sales. However, you begin to see World War I, depressing operations slightly. Segno returned to LA in 1915, a total failure with the Berlin operation, but he seems to pretty much disappear. Things go along through World War I and its end until 1920-21, where they collapse again. And of course, what happened then? Annie del Segno was sued in 1921 by her lawyer to pay for the 1911 divorce. She had stiffed this poor fellow from his money, and things must have been pretty bad at the American Institute of Mentalism, money-wise. In the early 1920s, things pick up ever so slightly, but then in 29-30, the Depression severely impacts the American Institute of Mentalism, and we see but a few covers from the 1930s up until 1937, where there are just 2 known. So that's a history and a look at the American Institute of Mentalism. In the 1970s, Segno's buildings were demolished to make way for the Lago Vista condominiums. And you see the Segno property at the left, and you see the Segno property from a 2012 Google Maps photograph. And how do I know I'm right here? Well, look at the palm trees, okay? You see them in 1906 or 7 when they were first planted. Maybe they're about 6-8 feet tall. And then in 1912, you can see they're more than 100 feet tall. And this is what happens to palm trees when they grow. I've often thought, wouldn't Professor Segno's properties have been a wonderful home for a museum of the city of Los Angeles, where you could show the art and sculpture of people in Los Angeles? It would be a wonderful place for that, with all its spookiness and probably attract a good clientele. Might have, if a benefactor came along, maybe he could have bought part of it for the LA Collectors Club and its library. But no, typical American fashion, it was destroyed and we put up condominiums. In 2012, we had a meeting of the Segno Success Club with Philippe, Larry, and myself, and we had lunch at a restaurant by LAX, Los Angeles International Airport, which had mock-ups of famous planes on its grounds. And of course, certainly one of the most famous, if not the most famous plane, is the British Spitfire. So we had our picture taken under it. And by the time the picture reached me, you can see who our pilot is for this journey through the American Institute of Mentalism. I should note here, I like to use this picture of me. Doesn't look like me anymore. It was taken in 1999 at a chemistry symposium in Heidelberg, at the Heidelberg Castle. And the photographer had a 25-year-old Leica camera that she was using to take pictures. And this is a wonderful camera, and that it made you look 10 years younger and 25 pounds lighter. And I have no idea how that program that camera was programmed, but I'd certainly like to have one. I need your help. If you are a collector of postal history from the 1900 to 1935 period, if you see covers to the Segno organization, the New York Institute of Science in Rochester, the Oxypathor Company in Buffalo, or the Peebles Institute of Health in Battle Creek, if you see a cover like this from this area, take a photo of it, take an iPhone picture, send it to me. My email address is readily available. I get a lot of help from fellow collectors. And if you're successful in helping me get material for my collection, you get to be a member of my slide of fame. Okay, and you can see I have many famous collectors on this. Of course, Robert G. Stone from the France and Colonies, United States, Kathy Johnson, Alain Millet, who used to be a member, I don't think he is now, France and Colonies in Great Britain, Maurice Hadida, where is he? John Mayne, of course, from the France and Colonies Society. So if you help me find material for my collection, I will put you on my slide of fame. And the most recent member is Loic, who just joined this year, and that was the Dahomey cover that he got from my collection. So if this talk has whetted your appetite for more punishment, Chris has already seen this. I've done a full chapter on Professor Segno in the European African colonies for Opus 23 of the European Academy of Sciences. It's about a 15, 17-page chapter on Segno's success in the European African colonies. And I heartily recommend you go to that for much more information than I was able to present this afternoon. So that's it. Thank you very much for coming, and I'd be pleased to take comments and questions if things are still working. Chris, are you there?
Yes, that was lovely. Thank you very much. Yes, it's an incredible story. Quite incredible.
Any comments, questions? Anybody have any more Gold Coast covers for me? Always interested.
Ed, I have to ask, I mean, know that you have read so much of Segno's material and the New York Institute of Science and everything. Are you a better man?
Yes, actually, yes, because I'm happier. Okay, I mean, you have to realize, I mean, when I sold the group type collection, that was 2,600 covers, 3 catalogs by Spink.
Yeah.
And it was almost, you know, a lifetime's work, and I was very saddened by that. But now I find I can get the same enjoyment from a $25 cover, as you know, from or to one of my fraudsters. It's a lot of fun, and actually Loic and I have a joint article that we hope will become in press for the American Philatelist of the American Philatelic Society on one particular fraud cover to France that I brought Loic in on to help me out with. And we've turned that into a 6-page article, and Loic's going to have the job of translating it into French and getting it published in some sort of French general vehicle in Europe and see what that generates. So it's been a lot of fun working in this area, and in my retirement, it's given me something to do. You can see at the upper left how happy Larry and Philippe are with their books, The American Institute of Mentalism and How to Be Happy Though Married. I mean, this area is just a lot of fun, and you have no idea what's going to show up from where and who you have to contact for help with these material. So in that sense, yeah, I feel like I'm a better person. I haven't taken any advice from our former president, Donald Trump, and I have not started any other scam type activities myself to help make money for the Grabowski family. So.
But I will also say that, you know, this you can say, we can say anything about, you know, Segno and all of his, you know, mail order fraud and everything. But the truth is, thanks to those guys, we have some fantastic covers that have remained because they resold all of it to make some money to the philatelic trade.
Yes, well, my best Segno cover, which isn't part of this talk, is actually use of group type from the New Hebrides, registered to Los Angeles to Professor Segno. I think it's the only group type cover registered group type cover from the New Hebrides to a foreign destination. The registered, except France, the registered covers normally go to the New Hebrides, New Caledonia, or France. This one goes to Los Angeles. And again, I didn't even realize it was to Professor Segno when I bought it because I wasn't seriously collecting them.
And I think you mentioned that they had like 6,000 to 7,000 like letters going out every day.
That's right.
So I mean, that's probably, and they had like 12,000 members at some point. That's
early years.
That's a pretty good, you know, response rate eventually. I don't know.
And there are, you know, he had millions of people to trade off. If those members left, he had a lot more waiting in line. Okay,
yeah.
it's a very you know, it's something that people seem to take to almost naturally, and you know, so it's, as I said, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a very interesting.
Thank you very much, Ed. Could you stop screen sharing now, and then we can see everybody?
Oh, okay. My instructions moved to the top of the screen. That's.
Thank you very, very much, Ed. Sorry about the interruptions. That was my brother playing with the telephone. Has anybody else got any questions? Oh, one down the bottom. What actually happened to him? Did he have any children?
Yeah, he came back to the United States in 1915. The LA Times ran a big article, Mars destroys success waves. Okay, war destroys success waves. Marvelous. And they really blasted him. And he seemed to take very little interest in the American Institute of Mentalism. His wife was running it. Other people were heavily involved in the late teens and early 20s. And he just quietly melted into the background. And we have, what do you call it, death records in LA that show he died in 1950. Is that what? Yeah, 1950. At 70 years old. He was born in Canada, actually. He was a Canadian, but emigrated to the United States early in life. And he started working with the fraudsters in New York, the New York Institute of Science group, and then worked his way out to Los Angeles in his own fraud. We know of no children at this point, but one never knows what's going to turn up. These fellows with the IAPSOP have dug very, very deeply into his history and not come up with any children or other wives or other interesting stories about him. So we really don't know what happened in his later life. But they kept his name and all of the aura that went with it on the organization. So in 1936, as you saw, the letter was addressed to Professor A. Victor Segno, Numerology Department. At that time, he probably had nothing to do with the organization.
Has anybody else got any questions? You can unmute yourselves now if you wish.
Other than it was a very enjoyable talk.
Absolutely.
An extraordinary story. Still more to come out though, isn't there?
It all came out of the group type, okay? Because I was wondering, who is this guy Segno? And you know, it just mushroomed out beautifully. The only thing I haven't done is a massive exhibit, you know, a 10 frame exhibit on Professor Segno or the New York Institute of Science. I don't know that I have the energy to do that. I don't know that I have the energy to deal with the judges with respect to that. I don't know that I have the concentration to do that, but it's fun to write. It's fun to give talks, do PowerPoints, and they keep it. You know, I keep going down to smaller and smaller areas.
There we
I think
are.
I have to contribute a little bit there, Ed, because whenever you appear on one of these programs, you seem to have boundless energy and immediate recall of anything you've put your hands on with regards to philately, and I admire you immensely. If only I had a fraction of your capabilities. No, you're so welcome on our programs. We look forward to you showing us something again.
Well, I will mention that there's one more chapter to Professor Segno that for the moment is unwritten, but we have a PowerPoint on it. This is a joint effort by Loic and myself. But someday maybe you'll want to hear about that. So.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt.
Well,
I've got to shoot off now, if I may. Thank you ever so much, Ed. Really good to see that. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Nice to see everybody else this afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.
Okay.
well, I agree.
Okay, we've got one meeting in July, and then after that, at the moment, we haven't got any more offers, so we shall have to see how we go. Okay, then. I think that concludes. Thank you very, very much, Ed. That was very, very nice.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming, and
Thank you.
I'll see you all again in July.
Yep.
Doubtless.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
A bientôt.
Everybody.
Yeah.